Hello guys, welcome you all to my new YouTube channel. This is my first program, and this channel will cater to the interviews. This channel will show you the interviews of research scholars who are from India studying here, their views on sociology, political, philosophical angles, what their research is about, how they are progressing in their research, how their journey has been here, and what is going to be the scope of this research for the students who are in India now. So let's start with our guest today. Our guest is Dr. Ayaz Ahmad. Dr. Ayaz Ahmad is on a Fulbright Scholarship. He is studying as a visiting student in Columbia University. His area of research is into philosophy and sociology. He has been part uh, of universities in India as a professor. He has been a faculty member for and he has taught law in India. So let's know more about his journey here in US, New York. Welcome to our channel, Dr. Ahmad. So let us know more about your journey so far as a Fulbright scholar. Uh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, journey so far has been very rewarding, very fulfilling in terms of the research opportunities that I got here after I settled down. Of course, initial 1 month was the transition is a struggle, but after that, the kind of resources and support system that I got here was extraordinary, and I have really benefited immensely from my experience with Columbia University and my Fulbright program.
Okay, great to know about that. So let us know how what exactly. I mean, our students are mostly viewers are mostly students, maybe doing their graduation, post graduation, or a doctoral. So it's very less known about Fulbright scholarship. So if you can just elaborate more what Fulbright scholarship is and how was your journey here as on a Fulbright scholarship on this.
Well, Fulbright is the program of U.S. government, which is running in more than 150 countries now for about 100 years. And one of the largest program is Fulbright India program, which is also known as Fulbright Nehru program. Uh, so it is in different categories, from undergraduate to postgraduate to PhD, postdoc, as well as professional and administrative categories. So my program is in the postdoctoral category, which is also the longest one, which can go up to from 6 months to 2 years. In fact, my term is 2 years. So I can talk about my program, the postdoctoral fellowship program. So this is a completely research program, right? So after you have completed your PhD in India, within 5 years you can apply for it. So the eligibility phase is after the completion of your PhD, and next 5 years. Within 5 years, you must apply for this. You remain eligible to apply for this postdoctoral fellowship.
So you are here as a student or you are as a professor? You're teaching here.
Well, it is primarily a research program. So my designation with Columbia University is as visiting Fulbright visiting scholar. So technically, I'm not in that student category, but I don't teach much also. My job is to research, to complete my research project. So as part of completion of that research project, continuation of the research work, I do interact with different departments, faculty members, sometimes students also. But most of the time, it is it is an independent research, whereby Columbia University provides me all the support, facility, institutional support and facility, but not much responsibilities are imposed on me. So that way, this is the kind of program that I was looking for, because my research problem and my research questions were of nature where I needed this kind of support as well as freedom.
Great to know that you have freedom of thoughts. So yeah, that's what we need today. Uh, so how long have you been in New York, yeah, doing this research, and where are you now in your studies?
Well, so it's been about 8 months. I have completed, yeah, so 8 months is going to be over within next week, I think so. My journey so far has been, as I said, has been very rewarding and fulfilling, because what I planned to do, what I intended to do when I applied for Fulbright Fellowship, and last 7 8 months, I think my research is headed in the right direction, and I'm going to achieve most of the research objectives that I had laid out for myself. So that way, the journey has been very fulfilling and rewarding so far. One, I think that the most difficult part of my research, the theoretical, the conceptual, the one which is related with philosophy. So I'm in the philosophy department of Columbia University. That part I think is complete, and I should be able to publish a research paper also on this part very soon. uh, the second component, which has got to do with the analysis of the judgments of the Indian Supreme Court and judgment of the American Supreme Court, that remains to be completed.
Great, great. How, I mean, again, more, if there is a research student in a postdoc graduation or in doctoral studies, how do you think that research students should approach a Fulbright scholarship? And can
Well,
he keep it as an option? As since you said only 150, right? So looking at the Indian population, if there are people applying, there, I'm sure that there will be a huge competition. So how do you think that people should prepare or know
yeah,
about
for
this?
150 would be total fellowships in all the categories for India. For postdoctoral fellowship, there is hardly, I would say, 25, 26,
Oh,
not more
okay.
than that. And within the law and social science background, I see three, four, or five maybe. Within law, there is hardly any fellowship. I mean, one you get one person from law background in 2 3 years. So when I got this fellowship last year, I think it was a gap after a gap of 3 years.
Oh,
So in law, mostly it caters to science, engineering, fundamental scientific research, and so on. There is very small component of social science, and law does not even exist as a category within the eligible categories of Fulbright. So therefore my work is a lot of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and good part of it has got to do with social and political theory. So that's how I become eligible for it.
okay, great. So now, can you just let us know about your studies, or have you published any research papers? What's going on with the research?
Well, as I said, that the theoretical conceptual part I think is complete, and I'll be submitting it for publication. I'm going to present it now from the next academic session. I'll be presenting at Columbia University, at Princeton University, at Rutgers University. So that discussion is going on. That component, only one part is complete. The second part, or integral part of my research problem, is needs to be worked out. So
Oh,
I'm
okay, okay.
looking forward to it in coming
So now,
months.
are you in a position to talk about your research in public, or you still want?
Well, yes, of course. Why not? Research. So the research problem, let me put it in a very, well, simple but practical manner. What is the problem that I am researching here, and how this problem emerged for me? Well, in Indian Constitution, you have Article 30, which talks about minority educational institutions, right of the religious and linguistic minorities to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. Um, and over a period of time, Supreme Court has interpreted Article 30 in such a way that the social justice policies, affirmative action laws, are not applicable to minority educational institutions, right? So what has happened is, as a result of this uh, constitutional provision under Article 30 and its interpretation by the Supreme Court in last 75 years, what has happened is that you have exclusion of social justice policies from religious minority education institutions. Now, the practical impact of this exclusion is that minority education institutions are segregated educational institutions, that they are segregated in variety of ways. Social justice policies, as we know, in India, depend on the basis of historical social experience, is uh, caste based, in a way that we have had in South Asia in general, caste based hierarchical society. So you have had Dvija caste, so called Savarna caste, upper caste, Ashraf caste, superior caste. We had the middle class, the what is known as the Shudra, the Ajlaf caste, and then outcasts, the Atishudra, the Arzal caste groups. So, affirmative action policies under Article 15.4 and 16.4 have been designed to make all institutions, public institutions more inclusive of traditionally, historically excluded and marginalized caste groups. Now, once you exclude social justice policies from minority educational institutions, what happens is that you have only Ashraf caste groups. And I'm here especially talking about minority education, Muslim minority educational institutions. You have Ashraf caste groups completely monopolizing that space. You don't have Pasmanda, you don't have Ajlaf and Arzal, you cannot have Shudrati Shudra. So SC, ST, OBC are completely excluded. And in the name of a sprinkling of the outsiders, you have few Brahmin Savarna caste groups. So it is a very segregated educational institution space. You have, say, you hardly have 4-5% population, probably 10% population, which is represented in religious minority educational institution. On the other hand, so when I was researching this within, say, trying to study the judicial process, make sense of the judicial process around Article 30, I came across the approach of the American Supreme Court on minority educational institutions. So this contrast will bring out the problem and the complexities of my problem. When I looked at the approach of the American Supreme Court on minority education institution, here minority was and is historically understood as racial minority. So you have the American Supreme Court in late, say, 1880s, 1890s, inaugurating or installing what now is known as separate but equal doctrine, which is that racial minority educational institutions and racial majority educational institutions are equal for all practical purposes, but they can exist separately, which means segregation between segregation of educational space between racial majority institutions and racial minority institutions. But of course, there was a backlash against this. The racial minorities in America, they started protesting. All kind of contestations were there. The legal battle was fought very fiercely in the 1940s, 30s, 40s, and then 50s. In the 50s, there was a huge victory. 1954, to be precise, when American Supreme Court abolished separate and equal doctrine, and it said no to segregation in educational institution, and said integration will be the future, right? So you find two approaches in Indian Supreme Court interpreting the provision for minority educational institution to make it segregated, because once you exclude social justice policies from minority educational institution, it becomes monopoly of so-called higher caste, the Ashraf Savarna caste groups, right? 8, 9, 10% population, less than that, I would say, is present there. When you look at, on the other hand, the American Supreme Court, it did in the late 19th century talk about separate but equal doctrine, segregation, but from 1915 onwards, it has been consistently talking about integration. Of course, there have been some reversals recently, but that aside, uh, you have two different approaches on the question of minority education institution, two diametrically opposite approaches, right? Two diametrically opposite constitutional, legal, and judicial approach on same question. How should minority education institution exist? Whether they should exist at all, and if they exist, what should be their form, nature, and character? You have Indian Supreme Court going in one direction, going south. You have American Supreme Court going north. So the problem is, how do we make sense of it? Why? So again, let me reformulate, simplify. Why is it and how is it that in America, protection of minority rights means integration of educational institution? On the other hand, in India, protection of minority rights means segregation of educational institution. Right? This why? That question emerged during my legal research. But that question cannot be answered from the discipline of law only, right? Because it involves a lot of construction of social meaning as well as social political collective identities. That question is a social question, social theory question, sociology question, political philosophy question, political theory question. So that's how my research became multidisciplinary.
Oh, okay,
Right?
okay.
Do you get the point?
Great. So I believe it's very vast, and we will require another episode to talk about it, and once that is published as well. So now, how far have you reached into your studies, and what's the status of your research right
Yeah, so in terms of progress, as I said, the conceptual theoretical part is complete. There were two dimensions to the theoretical aspect. One is how do I, first of all, how do I make sense of the social and political theory, contemporary social and political theory in the context of democracy? So, democratic theory, social theory, political theory. That had to be first studied, mastered, and translated into Indian context. Number one, that was one component. The second component is in the process of translation, you have to take into account the social, historical, cultural, and political context of Indian subcontinent also. So, that part, with the help of philosophers, theorists, social and political philosophers and theorists, and Indian social political tradition, my entry point, my translation of the political theory in Indian context is through what I call Phule Ambedkar Ansari Periyar tradition, right? So the tradition which has been developed, which has been evolving and developing for last 150 years from uh, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule onwards, which is anti-caste, which talks about uh, empowerment, inclusion, development of the vast majority. You are talking about 85, 90%, 90% of the population. So a discourse of the 90% of the population. So translation of political theory, social theory, contemporary social political democratic theory into the Indian context, that part, and the translation of and then matching with the Indian histories, social and cultural political tradition of the Phule Ambedkar Ansari Periyar tradition, the majority, the Bahujan tradition. That part I think I have completed recently. I think I have, yeah.
now?
So
Right.
that part is complete, and then the second part, which has got to do exclusively with the analysis and comparison of the judgments delivered by Indian Supreme Court on the question of minority education institutions and the judgments delivered by the American Supreme Court on the question of minority education institution. That part I hope to complete in coming months.
Great, great, very nice. Good to know about that. I hope very soon we will know about your studies as well, how far that is. And now, how do you think that your study here, the topic that you are researching on, will impact the current Indian situation, or where do you think the impact should be?
Well, in terms of impact, as you see, the way I have problematized the question, as you can see that the impact is going to be uh, extraordinary in variety of fields, right? Looking from the point of view of researchers, uh, number of disciplines will find opening, right? So whether it is political, Indian political science, social science in general, the whole discipline of minority rights, minority education institution, but also the question of formation of minority as a category, formation of majority as a category. That will have that is for researchers, relevance and importance for researchers. Variety of scholars would like to intervene. I suppose would like to contest my propositions that I am trying to develop, and then some of course would like to take it further and variety of other disciplines. But there is a practical component as well. It's not a completely theoretical, conceptual, research topic, research project, which has very little practical. It is going to have a lot of practical impact in the way we imagine our education institution first and foremost, because that's where the focus is. But if you change the educational institutions, the way it is organized in the minority education institutions, majority education institution, private education institutions, public education institution, then the whole social life, cultural life, and political life is also impacted. They do come up very frequently in my research, and those questions are also opened up. So the way society in general is organized should be organized. Public institution in general should be organized. My the sense that I'm developing as part of my research is that the social organization, political economic organization at present of India has been designed to serve the minority of so-called Savarna and Ashraf caste groups. It caters to the needs of only 10-11% people. But once you reimagine, once you give up the category of Muslim minority, you know, some kind of a constitutionally desired or democratically required category, once you give it up and once you reimagine the social, political, cultural life in terms of anti-caste democracy, where caste is to be annihilated and equality is to be established in vast segments of the society, irrespective of caste boundaries, then our social, political, economic, legal institutions should serve the majority of 90%. We cannot become a developed country, a developed, progress, happy, self-sufficient, independent, have, prosperous country if all our public institutions are designed only to serve the 10% of the population.
Oh,
This whole play of this whole possibility of public institutions serving only the interest of 10% population has been, I am arguing, and I can see it theoretically, conceptually, is has been made possible through the category of constitutionally sanctioned category of religious minority. Once you problematize, once this category is dissolved through anti-caste social justice policies, especially in the field of education, then it will have repercussions and benefits in
okay,
variety of areas.
great. So now, good to know about that. And so, how do you think there will be scope for students to carry on the further research on this study or take up your topic as their research area?
Yeah, so within the discipline of law, there is a lot of scope for further research because I'm only focusing on one area, how minority education law and minority education institution is constructing and reproducing and reproducing uh, religious minority category, right? Religious minority identity. But then there are various other legal practices which can be studied similarly and problematized. There are a range of practices, legal practices, segregated this whole idea of communal personal laws, for example, which has been made part of the minority rights bouquet, that if you want to protect minority rights you must protect communal personal laws. I think that is one area in which we need to have a relook at it, theoretically, conceptually, as well as practically. But then you also have the problem of segregated housing spaces, you have a problem of segregated living spaces, you have segregation installed in variety of social, educational, political, economic spaces. So further research needs to be done how legal practices, social practices, cultural practices, educational practices uh, construct, produce, and then sustain religious minority, religious majority discourse, which goes on to undermine the democratic aspirations as well as possibilities of the majority of what I call Pasmanda Bahujan 90% population.
Oh, great. Great. So I believe that the students will take a lot of things from this, and they, they will approach your topic as their area as well. I mean, there are a lot of insights, and thank you for us this insights. So, guys, this was Dr. Ayaz Ahmad. Dr. Ayaz Ahmad, as I said, is a research scholar from Columbia University. So, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, just put it in the comments note so that we can answer that in future episodes. And Dr. Ayaz Ahmad will be with us in next episodes too. So, we'll talk about different topics with him, different research aspects. Okay, so uh, to know more about the topics, please subscribe our channel, like, share, and let people know that this is what we are doing. And please share your comment. How do you find the program was? Do you need any changes to be made? Do you want any topics to be covered? Do you have any questions? Anything related with the research, or as we mentioned, Fulbright Scholarship, or we mentioned an area topic. So please do mention that in comments. We'll make a note of it and try to answer all your questions. Correct. So this was Dr. Ayaz Ahmad here today with us. Uh, so bye for now. See you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you.